Doubt will trip you up, turn you back, have you quit. The only thing holding us back from charting new territory is doubt. Got to understand that doubt. Can't just delete it by wishing it away. Got to work with it. We all do. We got to talk to the motherfucker. You got to say, I see you, Mr. Doubt. I hear you, Mr. Doubt. I know you want to keep me from doing what I was meant to do. But I also know that while you're part of me, I do not intend to allow you to become all of me. John Gennaro, count me in!
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Today's first words belong to Kevin Garnett from his incredible autobiography, KG A to Z, but the rest of them belong to me. Welcome to Devine Intervention, a self-help podcast about basketball. My name is Dan Devine, and before we get started, here are 3 things that I am grateful for today. Number 1, I get paid by Yahoo Sports to write about the NBA and talk about it into this microphone and into that camera. Pretty good deal. Number 2, that I hung on to my copy of KG A to Z, a book that essentially answers the question, what would it be like if Kevin Garnett read you an encyclopedia of the inside of his mind? Which is to say it might be the best book that anybody has or ever will write. And number 3, I get to spend part of my morning with somebody who I believe to be a genuine source of good in this world. My guest today is a hilarious stand-up comedian who has performed on Conan, Late Night with Seth Meyers, and The Late Late Show with James Corden, and whose debut stand-up comedy special, People Pleaser, is available for streaming now. He won multiple Emmy and Peabody Awards as a staff writer on Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, and served as the head writer and executive producer of the Sainted and Gone Too Soon, Desus and Mero. He's a heck of a writer in print, too, with work appearing in places like The New Yorker, Esquire, and McSweeney's, as well as a lovely collection of essays titled Nice Try, and a delightful newsletter that's called That's Marvelous, in which he delivers thoughtful and very funny pep talks to people who need them, like me. Friends, a warm welcome for Josh Gondelman. Josh, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really psyched to talk some hoops with you.
It's my pleasure. I figured we were going, the nature of the conversation is going to move Boston centric. So I figured who better to start us off than Kevin Garnett, somebody who is, I think, a motivational speaker of a different sort than you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think he has his tough love. He's like on the tough edge of tough love, which I respect.
You're more on the love edge of tough love.
Yeah, I would say I'm not even on the edge. I'm not, I don't bring a lot of toughness to my love. It's very gentle, but I love KG so much. And I just love his, like, what feels like a genuine intensity that he brings to everything. It's incredible.
Yes. Well, first off, you saying that you don't bring much edge to it made me think, instead of it being you paid for the whole seat, but you only need the edge, it's more like, you could use the whole seat with me. That's good. Like, let's sit back, let's relax.
You paid for the whole seat, explore the space.
That's exactly right. There's no reason to just make yourself uncomfortable here. Let's really cozy down and get in.
I'm not trying to cramp your butt cheeks up.
Devine Intervention is, if nothing else, a place where we're trying to have zero cramped butt cheeks, as much butt cheek exploring studio space as possible. And Josh, I'm so happy to have you here to do that with me. I've asked you here today in part because, in addition to everything I just said, all the compliments and nice things, I considered you to be one of the truly great podcast guests. And
thank you.
I don't know if you've listened to the first few episodes. We could use some help here. So I need you to bring...
Get out of here. No, you're a great guest. And that is truly, it's embarrassing how much that compliment means to me. And honestly, I've recalibrated. When I started out in comedy, I thought I was going to be They Might Be Giants of stand-up comedy. And now I'm just trying to be the millennial Paul F. Tompkins of podcast guesting.
Well, first off, these are wonderful goals, and I think achievable only through great talent and empathy and warmth, and quickness. So you've achieved multiple things in multiple avenues in this capacity, and I love those as goals for you. May I someday be the They Might Be Giants / millennial Paul F. Tompkins of basketball podcasting. That feels like a really sweet spot for me to hit.
Honestly, it's such a great, I feel like it's an underserved community.
That's right. And like, I don't know how large it is, but if I can super serve that community, then I feel like it'll all come back to me tenfold. I've also brought you here today because I know you to be an NBA sicko with a particular love for the team that Kevin Garnett once led to an NBA championship, the Boston Celtics. So they're a team that I have not talked in great detail about on this show. So I'd like to get into that. But before we do so, here on Devine Intervention, no matter what we're talking about, we always try to operate from a place of joy. So Josh Gondelman, what is something from the world of basketball that has brought you joy this week?
I've been really grateful to jump on your train from the beginning, that just the overall health of players in the NBA has been, it seems, higher and more robust than in the recent past, right? Kawhi Leonard isn't suffering from mystery knees. Victor Wembanyama hasn't like snapped in half like people feared, or just like crumpled in the middle like one of those scooters that business guys with DUIs take to work. It just feels like at Zion Williamson, even though Stephen A. Smith has been fat shaming him lately, is like playing pervasively. So obviously there are some injuries, and I think what we forget about, right? We talk about an injury being like a number of weeks or games lost, but it's like a human being who's like, oh, I got to go to a physical therapist and, use the resistance bands, and like it hurts when I turn left. And so like just the fact that there's Bradley Beal's recovering from the back thing, Robert Williams III, who, has a place in my heart, is out for a long time. But like just the fact that we're getting to see so many of the greatest players, like we got to see LeBron and Anthony Davis playing at peak efficiency in a meaningful closeout playoff game, because the NBA was like, we got to start putting these in November and December if we want that to happen.
That's true. I like that we started off with a side Lakers dig, a little bit of side out of the side of your mouth to the Lakers. That's a good place for us to start. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the things that, when I felt like it was a pretty lukewarm take, but that wound up being, I guess, put me in sort of an arch position with the respect to the in-season tournament, was if the players care about it and play in it, it's going to be really good, because really competitive basketball with all the best guys in it is fucking awesome. Like it's going to be fun to watch. And so then that turned into like people are very upset about a lot of aspects of it. And maybe some of that is just like, you need to find some stuff to be upset about to stoke engagement and keep yourself occupied as, we cycle through late capitalism and into this despair of the toilet. But the amount of sort of like, oh, well, this isn't really all that, it doesn't matter all that much, or we're making a fake thing. All of this is a fake thing. But if the fake thing involves like the best guys being healthy and playing for 40 minutes and trying really hard, that's a pretty good fake thing to get excited about.
Yeah. I mean, basketball is fake, right? Like the in-season tournament is no more. It's like when people are like, oh, this religion is so ridiculous. Like they're all ridiculous. It's just which one that you choose to be like, this ridiculousness is how I actually see the world. And that's what the in-season tournament is. It like requires a great leap of faith, starting from and charismatic leadership. And that is truly what, I mean, I'm not the first to say it, but LeBron James was like, close your eyes, believe in the in-season tournament, because I believe in the in-season tournament. Right. And we all followed him.
Yeah, we took that step off of the cliff, and then we're like, all right, I guess I just got to keep walking across until we get to that red and blue court in Las Vegas. But it was there for us when we needed it to be, and we'll always have the LeBron James to thank for that.
When there was only one set of footprints, that's because the Dallas Mavericks court was faulty when it was created. So you really shouldn't be footprints on a basketball court.
Yeah, that's true. Right. Or, I mean, or take only photographs, leave only footprints on that court, but then don't leave too many, because you will snap an ankle.
Yeah. You'll go straight through it.
That's right. You really got to be careful about going straight through the basketball court. One team that regrettably, for your sake, did not make it to that sainted court in Las Vegas was the Boston Celtics. Mm-hmm. They had a good run through the tournament, but fell to Tyrese Halliburton and the Indiana Pacers, as everybody but those Lakers did. How much did you care about that? Like, did that bum you out significantly, or was it kind of like, oh, well?
It was it bummed me out minorly. You hate to see the team you're rooting for lose in a game that counts or something. I do think the in-season tournament really let you have your cake and eat it too, right? Because you got to care if your team did well, but you didn't have to care if they didn't do too well. Like Laker fans, I saw a bunch of them on Twitter being like, now we have more banners than Celtics. And like, obviously there's a tongue-in-cheekness to it. So if I'm like, shut up, that doesn't count, they'd be like, oh, I'm just kidding. So like, truly, I think that behavior brings out what is fun about the in-season tournament currently. It's that it lives in this liminal space between like, you have to take it seriously, as a sports fan, versus like, you can kind of write it off and you're like, I'm not going to like stomp around for a week because the Celtics lost in the quarterfinals. And it's like, it's kind of thrilling you don't want to see your team lose, but it is kind of thrilling to watch like an ascendant star and you go, wow, nothing you can do about that. This is Tyrese Halliburton's week.
And it can be Tyrese Halliburton's week in November and December, but still wind up being the Celtics' year. You know, it could wind up being where the Celtics need to get to banner 18 and level out the banner counts with whatever the shape and color and size of the in-season tournament one that the Lakers are going to hang is. And, you know, sort of framing it in terms of that rivalry. Celtics, of course, are one of the NBA's blue bloods along with the Lakers, 17 championships, dominant for large stretches of the NBA. You know, late 50s and 60s, early to mid 70s, most of the 80s. But given your age and when you would have been growing up outside of Boston, I'm guessing your introduction to the Celtics was a little bit different. What were the Celtics like when your kind of journey into fandom started?
They were not successful. I became a fan knowing that Larry Bird had been great, but kind of seeing him not at his peak. And I mean, like, it feels like how Tony Soprano feels like he came to the mob just like an empire in ruins that like
just missed the end of something great.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's important or I think it's beneficial to your psychological growth to become a sports fan when the teams you're cheering for are bad. That's like my boomerist take, that I think that helps you calibrate expectation. And so when they're good, you appreciate it. And when they're bad, you go like, that's part of life too. The ups and the downs, strikes and gutters, if you will.
Well, that's actually, I'll bring this up now because that's something that I had as like a broader discussion point for later, but maybe it's better to just do it off of this. My friend Paul Flannery, who covered the Celtics for a long time, once told me something that it always keeps bouncing around my head. And it's that the best time you can have in this league is right before you get good. And the Celtics have been good for the last, most of NBA history, but specifically most of the last like 15 years. And in the last 6 or 7, like perpetually championship adjacent without quite getting over the hump. And like, at the risk of sounding like, you know, dopey or first world problemsy, like, do you think that's a hard version of fandom in and of itself? Like, is that challenging in its own right?
I think for an individual fan, it is not as challenging, right? Like, you get to enjoy watching a team thrive in many ways. But I think collectively it becomes a problem, right? Where people are like, why can't these guys get over the hump? And like, why aren't they winning the chip? And like, you go, well, it's still like to lose in the NBA finals is the second best outcome of a season. And you want them to win, right? Like, obviously you want them to win. And I think that 07-08, the KG, Ray Allen, Paul Pierce championship year was really thrilling because the window from almost good to good was so tight because they were so bad and then got really good immediately. But I do also think that like it's fun to watch a team be good and not like I almost said pretty good, but I mean like very good and just not ultimately as successful. You want them to get one so that people talk about them in conversation like, oh, the teams that won the championship. But there is something about like, I don't think that 7 seconds or less Suns were less of a wonderful team to enjoy watching because they were very good for a while but never won the championship.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. And I think it's something, I know that I've had this conversation with other people. I don't think ever on the podcast, but we've maybe lost respect for just like the really good as opposed to like, and some of that is just the reductivism of, you know, rings culture and the idea that, you know, yes, only one team ends the season victorious, and then that means necessarily that everybody else failed. And like, I understand that from a player's point of view or from a coach's point of view, their job and their livelihood and everything, their legacy and the things that they have to some degree care about are all predicated on that ultimate success there. But for a fan's experience, like if you can't find other stuff to love about that, I think that speaks to maybe a failure of imagination on your part, or maybe like you're just not allowing yourself to access the full spectrum of emotions that this stuff can generate. Like the grit and grind Grizzlies will live in my heart forever. Mm-hmm. I think they got to one conference final and that was it. You know, like Blazers fans don't have to give back the experience of watching like Dame and CJ for a long time. Like, now it was that frustrating at moments, was that difficult at moments, I'm sure. But like, and I talked about this in the context of the Sixers with Mike Levin a few weeks ago. Like, objectively speaking, 2/3 of the league, if not more, would trade for your situation, like no matter what. Like you have the MVP and an ascending young star guard, and your team, you're like, you guys pay for good players, and you are trying to like generate competitive, like 50-win seasons every year. So much of the rest of the league would be like, I would kill to have that, but because of the proximity to, like, it's like being a millionaire on a street full of billionaires, and you're like, but I don't have that.
And there is a disappointment that comes with expectation, right? So like, I think that kind of goes back to where we entered this part of the conversation from, of like, when the baseline is teams can be really bad, right? Like you can watch your star players in like physical agony and professional decline and be like, I guess that's part of it too. And when that is in like living memory, you're like, oh, it's great to watch a team like kind of mow through the bad teams and win competitive games against good teams and win these slugfest playoff series, even if they don't win the championship, right? Like it doesn't, like you said, you don't have to give back like cheering for the teams in the good, exciting wins just because they lose their last game of the season.
Absolutely. And that said, you are within your rights as a fan to also be like, I really would like them to win that last goddamn game of the season, though.
Totally.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please. We'll get into it. I'm sure.
Josh, you're the guest. Please go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the thing with the Celtics that is frustrating to fans more than the wins and losses in the playoffs is the way that some of the losses happen, and the way that like it feels like there is another kind of tier of basketball, especially on offense, that they could be playing in a more harmonious way. And then when you're kind of like, I don't know, when you're playing your best, when you do your best, I think and the fans see that, there's less griping when you lose, right? Like when you go, hey, what are you going to do? Steph Curry is one of the all-time greats. And if he wants to score 45 points on 11 shots somehow, then like, what are you going to do? But I think the frustration is when you see the offense get stuck, and I think Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown sometimes kind of locking in as isolation players rather than practicing the habits of like ball movement and reading and manipulating defenses at the level that like the greatest of greats can do consistently.
So setting the table for just this year's model, the Celtics enter Tuesday's game against the Cavaliers, 16-5, best in the East, 7th in the NBA in offensive efficiency, 4th on defense, best net rating in the league according to Cleaning the Glass, outscoring opponents by a little over 9 points per 100 possessions, which, if that holds, would be the highest of any Celtics team since 2008-2009, the year after the title, where they were like incredible right up until KG hurt his knee coming out of All-Star. So there is an argument to be made that so far, at least, this looks like the best Celtics team in the last 15 years or so since that title run. But that said, you raised sort of a concern there. I'm wondering, is that the big worry that you have about the Celtics as currently constituted, that sort of station to station offense? Is that what's been a little, or is that like the boogeyman kind of lurking over the season for you?
I think so. That to me is like the hardest part, especially because when you see the way that this team, the players in this team can work in harmony, and the way they seem to enjoy playing with each other now at a level that, like, I don't know, like 3 years ago, people were going, could Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown, is it going to break out into like some kind of fist fight on the court? Like, how could they ever share the court together? And it's like, they're both good and they collaborate well, but neither one of the superstars has developed yet the kind of manipulation and vision that, like, I think Jayson Tatum, like, the comp for the way he tries to play, to me, as like a tall, strong wing who like who dominates a lot of possessions, is like a Kawhi Leonard. And I just don't think on offense he quite has the playmaking of Kawhi yet, although the shot making is like very close. And so I just would love to see them play to their strengths and like let Derek White, who's like a very willing facilitator, like take some of the burden off of them to be dominant all the time and just like put themselves in positions to like get a few more easy points. Like when you watch Jaylen Brown get like, you know, back cuts for dunks, he's like, it's like one of the most fun plays to watch. And it's like if both of those guys are getting 6 or 8 like just easy points per game, I feel like it really frees up everything else and loosens everything else up. And you get that like the first half of last season or first 20 games of last season where they're just the ball's flying around and and it's like a more dynamic offense rather than just relying on like the incredible talent, but like, you know, not necessarily a championship way to play.
It's interesting that you bring up the Clippers or Kawhi as a point of comparison for Tatum, because that's sort of like, that has been the push and pull with this construction of the Clippers. Like, you have 2 great wing scorer offensive players in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. And it's always been like, but do you really need a point guard with them or like a true table setter with them? And then you get into the games that are the hardest, and it's often like, oh yes, actually you do need somebody to sort of make sure everything runs smoothly and get those guys the ball on time and on target. And we'll see if James Harden winds up being that guy.
Oh, I can't wait to see.
I think yeah, there's a Lucy holding the football component to like the first 5 or 6 games. You're like, well, this isn't going to work out so well. And then now it's starting to go better over the last like 10 or 11 games. And it's like, see, Harden's warming up. The Clippers are getting going. And like the Clippers are going to have a major injury in the playoffs, and James Harden is going to turtle in the playoffs. Like the collective power of those, like the harmonic convergence of that is going to be, you know, potentially like world breaking once you get to the postseason.
It's also like, I think the wonderful thing about it as a hater is that it could all go so wrong in a way that's so fun. They the other wonderful thing about it is that like every year could be the year James Harden turns it around in the playoffs. And I think like if they go really far, if they win a championship, which I don't think is likely, then it's like, man, what an incredible late career turnaround by James Harden. What a cool thing to see a guy who's like one of the most incredible offensive players of a generation, maybe in league history, and who like just delightfully gets vaporized by the sun's light like a vampire during the playoffs. And like if he can turn that around, that's like another exciting thing to watch. And then if they lose, also exciting. Sorry, Clipper fans, I don't mean to like delight in your misery, but like that is one of the fun things about watching James Harden.
See, I was going to say you entered that with the lens of a hater, but you couldn't help yourself but being like, and also a potential opportunity for growth and redemption, you know, but like
this is the having it both ways that sports allows, where like so many circumstances in life, it's a 0-sum game, or you win or you lose, you get the thing you want or you don't. But I think sports gives you this, like, there can be 2 exciting outcomes, or like a multiplicity of exciting outcomes of any situation. And like one of them is James Harden, who is so fun to root against, does the James Harden thing of not playing to his potential in the playoffs. And then the other one is he does, and everyone goes, wow, we didn't know he had it in him. And that's like a story that everyone loves.
Speaking of a multiplicity of things that you can enjoy in a situation, does it feel a little on the nose that the Celtics decided to make the end of their bench Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard, and Luke Cornett?
It's a little, and speaking as a white person, it's a little Caucasian. Like Peyton Pritchard is like the ultimate Celtics bench guy.
Yes. Just
like he truly, you're like, was he like a background actor in The Town? Like
the look is incredible. Yeah, just like the shaved down head. It's really, it's quite stunning. Looks like he could have doubled for Renner.
He's got the kind of Marshall Mathers core that was like, that people have brought up before, but that is like what I grew up with. Like this was like a look when I was in high school, was like that kind of like that dude. I like went to high school with like 70 of that dude.
So I'm having a lot of those feelings about Tommy DeVito being the new quarterback of the Giants. And I'm like,
that's right.
This was 95% of Staten Island. So yes, I remember this very, very well. So that said, so the depth is another thing that people often raise as a concern with the Celtics, like best top 6 in the NBA. And we're going to veer toward excitement in a moment. But and Sam Hauser has been great, for all the jokes. Like a little under or about 10 points and 4 rebounds a game, shooting 44% from 3, like bombing away as soon as he gets in the game. He knows the assignment and what he's supposed to do. Pritchard, a perfectly fine third point guard who's going to look even better when his shooting warms up. He's been really cold from the start there. It's just, you do wonder, like that's going to be the gamble they've made on so hyper investing in their top 6 is when you get to the games that matter most, you're not going to need as much out of the 7th, 8th, 9th guy. This was the gambit that the Nuggets pulled off last year. But even within that, like if you get to a series where you need a little bit more or a matchup where you need a little bit more, as presently constituted, that's going to mean like, is Delano Banton going to be an answer or O'Shea Brissett? There's not a whole lot of answers you probably feel great about right now. But the reason you don't have to worry quite so much about that right now is because that top 6 has been absolutely lights out and makes me wonder what excites you about this version of the Celtics.
Ooh, I really, this is so corny and specific. As much as I don't want to sound like one of the Boston guys that's like, Jayson Tatum will never do it. He's not the guy. Get him out of here. But like, I really love this backcourt. I think like I love the Derek White Marcus Smart backcourt. I love the Derek White Jrue Holiday backcourt. I love they're kind of have you seen they have kind of like it's like a nickname for the sickos. They call them the stock exchange for steals and blocks.
Oh, that does make sense. I like that.
That's like a true for the sickos. Like nobody talks about stocks like
yes,
other than their real heads. And so I love watching them play defense. That's like so fun for me. I think the playmaking is evolving. I have to like talk my dad off, not a ledge, but like not a cliff, but a ledge, we'll say, every time.
He's on the edge of his seat.
Yeah, he's on the edge, and I'm trying to just push his butt back to the meaty part of the seat. And about, every time Tatum or Brown gets double teamed and doesn't get off the ball fast enough. But I think they're both developing in that way. And I think like and I think they have bigs that play well in the pick and roll. I actually think like Luke Cornett is like the absolute, and this is such a backhanded compliment, but like he does some of the things that Robert Williams does at like an A+ elite level, at a level that's like, oh, I'm glad there's still a guy that like crashes the offensive boards and like can catch lobs, not because he's the most dynamic athlete, but because he's 1,000 feet tall.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Sometimes it's just like the job needs to get done. And as long as somebody can do it, even if it's not at the A+ level, like the most important thing is just, do you not fall off a cliff when that person needs to be tasked with doing it?
Yeah.
It would be really hard for any reserve player to not fall off a cliff, though, just given how high that bar is from that starting 5, which has been the best big minutes lineup in the league. Kristaps Porzingis, Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Jrue Holiday, plus 114 in 202 minutes.
I thought you were, when you said plus 114, I thought you were going to say year-old Al Horford coming off the bench.
Al's getting sort of brought along slowly. He's sitting in the sun for a while, and then when they need him, they're going to bring him in. But for right now, he just gets to kind of rest, sip some tea and play a limited number of minutes. Offensive efficiency for that starting 5 is higher than the Pacers, and the defensive efficiency you just mentioned, watching that backcourt play defense with the length of the wings, with Porzingis as the rim protector back there. They're allowing 98.6 points per 100 possessions, which is a healthy temperature, not a defensive rating. And it is the kind of defensive rating that no team's done in a full season since the lockout year, 2011-12. That was the last hurrah of the KG, Pierce, Allen Celtics, and that first like monster Tom Thibodeau Bulls team. So like, this is in an era where offense is exploding. This starting lineup is defending like that while scoring like this. And so, you mentioned the still developing the burgeoning chemistry of that unit, but it does feel like at least just the fundamentals of it, even if everyone doesn't exactly know where everyone else wants to go yet, the basics of the argument for making the big trades works. Like you're seeing the results early, and the results look pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're with all the shooting they can put on the floor and the defense and the like evolving playmaking. I do think like on a basketball level, this is that starting lineup is like pretty outrageously capable. And like, I really love, I mean, like, this is you're going to get like real Homer Josh coming out, is that like,
that's what you're here for.
I will deliver. I think if Al Horford were playing for almost any other team, people would be talking about him as like, he's 37. He plays hard. He's played hard forever. He's been a great player. He's the guy that you're like, he took a huge pay cut to stay with the Celtics for 2 more years. With any other team, people would be like, we got to get Big Al a ring. Like, we're rooting for him to get a ring. But because it's the Celtics and the people in America hate Boston like it's Russia in 1982, there's no warmth for that. And I think that's a bummer.
Yeah, there was a moment, I guess it was during the run to the finals a couple of seasons ago, where that started to burble up a little bit, where it's like, would a championship mean Al Horford's a Hall of Fame player? Mm-hmm. Oh, let's consider his career in context. And like it never overwhelmed, because it's the nature of his game doesn't overwhelm. The guy that it always made sense to compare him to in style and demeanor and everything was always Duncan.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, this guy is just a bedrock fundamental piece of a very good team for a very long time.
Yeah.
And
it doesn't have, oh no, I'm interrupting you. I'm sorry. I apologize. It never had because Tim Duncan could really dominate through his prime, right? In a way that like you never really saw night to night with Horford. I also think it's because people will go, well, it's the Basketball Hall of Fame, not the NBA Hall of Fame. And I think if he gets an NBA title, the 2 college titles will put him in. That's my layman's assumption, but I don't get a vote.
Well, I mean, I hate to be the bearer of surprising news, but you are going to be one of the selectors for the next round of Basketball Hall of Fame.
Hell yeah. So, all right, I'm in. Oh, I'm gonna be really biased. I'm gonna publish my ballot online and just like soak up the hate like a Hulk Hogan in 02.
It's the right mentality, but I got to say, Josh, that is not all. As somebody who has to do that, it's really not all it's cracked up for.
I know.
Like it sucks.
It's so bad. I hate it. People, I mean, like, even when you say innocuous things on the internet, people respond in the most infuriating ways. Never mind when you say anything remotely subjective or controversial or political, people respond where you're like, is this your first day on this planet?
Right. And the good news is that there is and it's a renewable resource. There's an endless supply of people able to have those conversations with you, unless you are smart and curtail your usage of social media, which
I can't do.
Yeah, I'm pretty bad at it. And every one of my friends is like, you should stop doing this as much as you do it. Including the aforementioned very smart Paul Flannery, who did that and I think is living a healthier and better life for it. The big inflection point for the genesis of this offense and the change in the starting lineup was the offseason deal to trade Marcus Smart for Kristaps Porzingis. And it was a deal that generated a whole lot of coverage because of the time it came in the offseason, but also a lot of emotion and venting of feelings, very strong feelings in a lot of directions, which, perhaps is just the nature of saying goodbye to somebody who had been as elemental a piece of a franchise as Marcus Smart had been for as long as he had, and also as polarizing a figure as Marcus Smart had been within large swaths of Celtics fandom. What were your feelings like when the deal happened?
Horrendous. Some of the worst sports vibes I've felt in a long time. I was in Oklahoma City on tour. I'd had a fun show. I was in a great mood, and I got back to my hotel room and I saw the trade had been made, and it was like 11 p.m. Central, probably, because it happened right before midnight, right on draft night, and no, the night before the draft, I think, and I was just immediately a flurry of despondent texts with every Bostonian basketball fan who was up. So I was talking to my buddy Jay, who lives in Los Angeles now, and I was like, I know he'll be up. I was texting friend of the program, Charlotte Wilder. I was just like, I was on tilt. I felt bad because I'm like a huge Marcus Smart booster. I had a Marcus Smart jersey up behind behind me in my office at Jesus and Marrow for years. And I think there's footage of Marrow setting it on fire at one
Yes,
point.
that's right.
And it was I'm a huge fan, and I was very sad to lose Marcus from the team. And that I do, that hole in my heart has begun to heal with the emergence of Boston Celtic great Jrue Holiday, who I love to watch play basketball in a similar way. I will also say, and I hate to be a fucking drag, but like,
it's totally okay. This is like I'm figuring on
you
where
know
you're
what I'm
going,
gonna say.
and that is complete. We can do that. We
Well,
can absolutely do that.
I think it's worth bringing up, and I don't mean to be slanderous, but like, there's a pretty gnarly sexual assault allegation against Kristaps Porzingis, and I believe 2019 when he was still playing for the Knicks. And it's the kind of thing that there was no public resolution. I've like Googled pretty thoroughly, because I would, if there was a public resolution, you go, well, at least this is what's on the books, and you can take it at face value, or you can question that. But nobody has really mentioned it. And I think like, I felt okay bringing it up, partly because of a conversation that I heard you and the great Katie Heindel have on, I believe, her podcast, right, Basketball Feelings, about responsibly covering this kind of adjacent, really kind of grisly and difficult subject matter as it relates to the league. And so it makes it harder to fully embrace this team. And it certainly made it harder to embrace like this Kristaps Porzingis presence on the team. And I hate being the person who's like always screaming my head off about this particular issue, because I am generally a huge Celtics fan and homer, but like, I just wish that there were some kind of, especially smarter people than I have brought up, especially in light of a coach who is a person of color being disciplined very starkly and in a way that I think seems not unreasonable for sexual misconduct. And then to bring in this player who is accused of something very disturbing, and not to kind of give any kind of public interrogation or explanation of that.
Just to contextualize that, Josh is right about the timeline of it. March 2019, a woman reported to New York police that Porzingis had raped her on February 7th, 2018, while he was a member of the Knicks, which would have been hours after he tore the ACL in his right knee during a Knicks home game. Multiple reports citing law enforcement sources said that the woman said that Porzingis had held her down and hit her. Porzingis' lawyer said the player and his representatives unequivocally denied the allegations, though they did tell the New York Daily News that Porzingis had consensual sex with the woman. The lawyer said they had recommended the case to federal law enforcement for investigation as an extortion plot. And so this is March, April 2019. At the time, the Knicks had declined comment, said that's a Kristaps personal matter. It got nothing to do with us. The Dallas Mavericks, for whom Porzingis played, said we'd been instructed by federal authorities not to comment. And then that's kind of it in terms of public comment on this story. To the best of my knowledge, same as Josh was saying, I'm not aware of any follow-up reporting or public statements suggesting any resolution in the matter, whether that's legal or internal or whatever. Porzingis continued to play for the Mavericks, was traded to the Wizards, continued to play for them, was traded to the Celtics, has continued to play for them. And there hasn't been any discussion really publicly about it. So like, when you say, I understand your point of view, and I appreciate you coming from the perspective of saying like, I don't want to be a downer or a bummer, but I'm asking you about your experience as a fan. And you are, and that is, while that might not be universal, it's for all fans. So there might be some segment of fans that have a different response to that.
Sure.
These facts and this information as being put out. But you are certainly entitled to your own, and it is worth wrangling with the sense of like, I know I'm supposed to just be happy that the team's real good, but also there's this other component to it too. And as we mentioned earlier, as there are multiple ways to enjoy this stuff, there's also multiple ways to feel about it, even if the arrow supposed to be pointing one direction or another.
Yeah, and it's tough, and it's a complicated set of feelings, right? And it's a complicated situation where there are legal ramifications at play, certainly, and it just and maybe it's the kind of thing that will never be resolved in the public eye, and it's just tough to reckon with. Especially, I think the league. It's hard to like give the league the benefit of the doubt in the handling of these issues when there are, given like the way Miles Bridges' suspension was handled, kind of just welcoming him back into the league. And like after time served while he didn't, time served suspended while he didn't have a NBA contract, which that just feels like, I don't know. It just feels we still have work to do as fans and as institutions, and like really reckoning with this kind of violence is often adjacent to the game and the league.
Absolutely. Intimate partner violence is a gigantic problem context, like outside the context of the NBA, but specifically within the context of the NBA, a number of high profile stories in the last several years that the adjudication has been curious or felt lacking in a number of them. And this is one of them. And it's one that, but it's only one that, frankly, because there hasn't been any new information in like 4.5 years, is one that kind of feels like it's just been put on the back burner or left aside. And maybe, if the Celtics wind up progressing and this winds up being the kind of year where they go and make another deep playoff run, maybe that's the kind of thing that gets a little bit more sunshine on it, and we see if there's more information to be gleaned about it. Maybe not. It remains to be seen what what the appetite for focusing on it is, but it's not something to be turned away from. And it's also not something that lends itself to a neat pivot, but as we
playoff predictions, let's make them.
Right. The relationship with Smart and somebody that you said you sort of had this emotional connection to, that you were you're in the tank for. I've admittedly also been somebody who was like watching that guy or being a fan of a Knicks team that had to play that guy X amount of times a year for a decade. I'm like, I would take that guy on my team every, 7 days a week and twice on Sunday, even as it is difficult and frustrating. That said, you mentioned the hole in your heart beginning to be healed by Jrue Holiday. What has the experience of getting to root for Jrue Holiday felt like in these first 20-25 games?
I love it. I'm like, again, I love the backcourt overall. I love Jrue Holiday. Really, he brings so much Marcus Smartness to the table, which is maybe unfair because he was in the league first, I believe. But they are such. I think they're necessary dispositions and skill sets on a team. I think that this team before that trade seemed like they were going to lack that kind of like guy who leads with intensity, not necessarily personality intensity, but like on the court intensity, the kind of like the Marcus Smart, even him injured on the sideline screaming at the Grizzlies about being embarrassed. I was like, I miss him so much. But like, but the idea of like, he's the guy that is going to dive for every loose ball, the guy that like might get decapitated diving off the court to save a play. And it's like that. I think this Celtics team has not to impugn the effort of the other players, but I think you need a guy, especially with Grant Williams leaving too, that's kind of like hustle and attitude first, and then like offensive dynamism, physical, like exceptional physical talent second.
I love that as a point of comparison. I love that, like, we talk about the balancing out of what the skill sets and what the roster needs to look like. Like Jayson Tatum, I'm sure works his ass off constantly, but he's also like, that guy's just, he's cool as hell. And like, so
he looks so smooth on the court.
Yes.
Yeah.
The vibe needing to,
and you need a guy like, Kevin Garnett is the ultimate, and he was such a skilled player as well. But like, to bring it back to the top, he's the guy that like, there is something in my stupid towny heart that like loves watching him just like headbutt the stanchion before a game, and just like, you're just like, yeah, let's go. Like his heart beats to Ante Up by MOP. Like you just like a guy that's that intense. And I think like it's so rare that the most talented player on a team is also the one that you're just like, oh, this guy would run through a brick wall if to like make a chase down block. Like if they put a brick wall at half court, he would just like crush through it. And so I like having guys on the team that feel that's what they are there to do and not just incidental to the job. Because again, I'm like the last person to be like, I think these guys who are in like the best physical shape humans can be in and like run up and down the court for 40 minutes a night. I don't think they try hard enough. Like that's cornball behavior. But like I do like the guys that seem to like live to try. And maybe that just says something about what I'm like.
Man, say that word. That is, I feel like I want to clip that and put it on the wall behind me. Like this makes a ton of sense. Before we move, we're going to move on from these things, but I want to invoke your townie heart one time real quick if I can. We've talked about what there is to like and not like about the Celtics, but loving your team is only half the fun. As you mentioned, you also get the benefit of being a hater as part of sports fandom. So I'm going to give you 4 teams. Mm-hmm. You pick one of them and you can just tell me why they suck.
Okay,
right?
Please.
Lakers, Sixers, Knicks, Heat.
Ooh. Okay. So God, I have so much hate in my heart for all these teams. The Lakers are the Lakers. You got to hate them. The Knicks, I think, benefit from the Strokes benefit from being based in New York City. And even at their most mediocre, have 8 million hometown fans. So that the Knicks don't even. I said this when I worked at Jesus Zamora. The Knicks don't even occur to me as a rival. Like they're good this year, but like there was never a rivalry because like as much as people like when the Knicks are good, the NBA is good. And it's like, well, we shouldn't rely on that. The Knicks are rarely good. The Sixers again. I think like until. This might be the year. This could be the year that Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey take down the Celtics in a meaningful playoff series. But until then, in the words of Joel Embiid, it's not a rivalry. They always kick their ass. And so I really am saving my most venomous hate for the Miami Heat because I think that they have a great legacy. You know, I mean, I think like they won a couple championships because LeBron wanted to hang out with his friends and work by the beach. I think that's, yeah, sure. When you have a beach in your city, that is a built-in advantage that people don't talk about, lax tax laws. Sure, if we wanted to decimate the public good for the sake of NBA glory, yeah, maybe more states could do that. And, I grew up in a state that gave its citizens healthcare. So... Yeah, sure. You get 2 championships with LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. The Heat culture, court to me is the tipping point where I'm like, come on, like, like we're all looking at this, right? And because I think they're great, and I think the way that they take players and develop them and put them into ideal roles is really strong. They, won that 2 7-game series in 2 years, one that they lost to the Celtics, when they beat the Celtics. However, the way that the Miami Heat are talked about, they lost in 7 games on their home court as a 1 seed to the Celtics 2 years ago.
True.
And people
we talk about how close Jimmy was to making that shot and not to them losing that game.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were the anti-participation trophy culture. What are we doing here? And then they won last year. I take nothing away from them. Jimmy Butler is an incredible player. I'm very endeared to him by the haircut bit. That's like winning me. I feel like the emo bangs, this like soul music bangs, I think take like 50% of the hate in my heart away from Jimmy Butler, especially because he was such an effective US Open ball boy this summer. I'm much more charmed by him than I've been in the past. But the idea that like, God, the Miami Heat, they just win and win and win. And it's like, well, if that's the metric, what are we counting? Like what counts as winning? That's what drives me crazy.
It's mostly just how many aggrieved faces Eric Spoelstra can make on the sideline. Like that's I think the rubric for victory is like, how much does it look like your coach is about to have a coronary while also being like, yeah, it's the competition requires what and he's like, he's going to like break the desk or the chair by squeezing it as hard as he possibly can.
I would love, like, I think again, this is so much, and I hate to be like, it's a narrative thing, but like the grit and grind Grizzlies we're like, oh, this is like a scrappy team that plays hard. And you go, yeah, that's fun. And if that were what people said about this iteration of the Miami Heat, like they play really hard, they do the fundamental things, like Bam Adebayo is like one of the greatest defenders in the modern NBA. Jimmy Butler like really brings it and takes it up a notch in the playoffs. That I think I wouldn't feel the same level of like pure haterade, like just chugging haterade for the electrolytes of hate, because it just feels like when people are like, they win and they win and they win and you got to respect it. And you're like, I guess, like, but that's not, other teams have been to the finals and get to the conference finals without winning a championship. And that narrative is, well, they can't win. And it's like, well, what does win mean?
Right. Yeah. The sliding scale of what constitutes, like, right. If we're going to adopt this sort of principle of like, well, there's more than one way to win, yes, adopt that principle fairly and more equitably across teams. Absolutely.
And I think like that is valuable, right? They really do get the most out of, like, Eric Spoelstra's a great coach. They get the most out of their players playing super hard. Like, I think people talk about, can Sam Hauser transform into like kind of a Duncan Robinson style movement player who also can now like attack closeouts. Like they really maximize the skills and of their players, and they play super hard and they work together. And I think that's commendable. But the fact that they're putting like a Pat Riley quote about a different team on their court is like, oh, I just like, take your heads out of your butts, put your butts on the fat part of the seat, and just watch the game like people.
Well, the first thing that I think of when I think about that quote being on the court is, frankly, how dare you? And so that's going to be an opportunity for me to transition us into a quick segment that we do every once in a while on the show entitled How Dare You, in which we think about a shameful recent basketball occurrence, egregious flopping, absurd comment, terrible shot at the wrong time, etc., and act very and perhaps theatrically aggrieved by it. If you have one, feel free to go ahead. If you are thinking of one, I can go.
I got one.
All right, let's hear it.
Lakers hanging a banner for the in-season tournament.
I love this because mine is the opposite side of this. Tell me why you are aggrieved by it.
I was going to bring it all the way around because I think we're on the same side of this. I think it is like fine to do, but then the fans, I brought this up earlier, but the people celebrating it, like you get to hang the banner. That's cloth. I'm not here to oppose textiles. America needs to go back to its manufacturing roots. I don't believe that. I don't think that's true. But I'm not mad at the banner. It's something to celebrate. But the like fans act like you've been there before, even though you haven't, because this has never happened before, which is why it doesn't mean anything that much. But hang the banner. Just shut up. You're trying to have it both ways, which I'm also trying to do, which is why I hate when you do it.
Right. No, you don't get to have it both ways. I
get to have it both ways. You get 0 ways.
It's like Mac on It's Always Sunny being like, I'm playing both sides, but he's telling everybody that he's playing both sides. And they're like, you can't play it both sides that way. It's not how it works.
Yeah.
My feeling on this is, if you are having an overly strong opinion about this, which I know you are not, but if you have real feelings about this, like there are people who either feel like it is preposterous and like a stain on the sanctity of the game.
Yeah.
And people who feel like anyone who is arguing against the validity of an in-season tournament championship disrespects the soul of competition. Like, if you are staking out an extreme position on either side of this, consider not doing that.
It is a big who cares.
Yeah, consider chilling the out entirely about this. We need not rend garments over the sanctity of cloth hung in arenas. Some examples of other cloths that hang up in arenas. Madison Square Garden, they've got banners for Billy Joel, Harry Styles, and Fish selling out a lot of concerts.
Yeah.
Barclays had one that was just the Notorious B.I.G. 72. I don't know exactly. I get why, but like also I don't get why. Staples Center had one for Taylor Swift, and then they apparently took that down because the Los Angeles Kings complained about it. They thought they were cursed by the Taylor Swift banner.
Know that. Oh, that's
funny. Which I love. And then talking about the Heat there with their, nastiest, hardest playing, best conditioned, etc. Raised banners for Michael Jordan, who never played for them, and Dan Marino, who never played basketball.
Yeah.
So the Lakers won a competition, whether that competition is of equal weight and value to, of course, it's not to an NBA championship. I love the fact they're going to hang one that is a different shape and color, just so no one gets confused. Okay, fine.
That seems nice. It's a different thing. Cool.
What I would like most, though, is that if we open that up to the public and have everybody vote on what shape it is, like
yeah.
I think that like, we could end up with something very interesting there. You know, maybe like the silhouette of Alfred Hitchcock or something. I don't know. Make, you know, get Hollywood involved in some capacity would be good. But if you are, there are so many things in the world to feel aggrieved about. I guess broadly speaking, if this is one that you're choosing, there could be worse things. But like you can allow the blood pressure to reduce on.
Yes. Oh, because I think hang whatever as a banner. It's, you know, player of the month. Put up a banner. Why? They do it at Subway. Why not put it in NBA Arena?
Yeah, and you know, of course, we should all be trying to model ourselves after what Subway hangs.
The most numerous chain restaurant in the world.
Fantastic.
And I'll tell you what, that's a company that knows how to get rid of a sex offender.
Certainly does. We move now to the closing five, something that we do because Josh Gondelman, as a certified ball knower, you know that how you start is not as important as how you finish. 5 questions for the guests. Number 1, you started doing stand-up when you were like 18 or 19, right?
19, yeah.
Okay. What do you remember about the first time you killed?
Oh, I just remember like feeling not like I had it all figured out, but like I figured something out. Like I was like, oh, okay, I think I can do this. That was like the feeling of like, that it became fun to do on stage because I felt like I had a level of proficiency that was ideally replicable. And I wasn't just like excited for like, ooh, this is scary. This could go real bad.
Where was it? Where were you when you first did it?
I was the first several times I performed in the city of Boston was at Dick Doherty's Beantown Comedy Vault, which I think is a building in the basement of Remington's restaurant, which has since been, I think, overtaken by eminent domain by Emerson College, and Dick Doherty has since passed away. Rest in peace to Dick Doherty.
I do like that your even with your humility extended to like, I didn't think I had it all figured out. Even right away I was sort of like,
but it just like felt, it was such a shift because for a year I was like, ooh, this is like exciting. And like, I'm excited to like kind of figure it out bit by bit. And then I remember after a year feeling like I could go on stage and get enough laughs. And I was bad. Like if I watched the tape now, I'd be like, oh, burn it. Yeah. Delete that file. I mean, I'm sure it was like a physical mini recorder cassette at that time.
Right.
But yeah, I was like, oh, this is fun now because it's like, I can do well enough that I feel like I'm doing the job instead of just like trying.
Well, speaking of doing the job and trying, I mentioned earlier that in your newsletter, That's Marvelous, which people should subscribe to, you deliver pep talks to people who might need them, whether that's fans, strangers. This week, it was everyone who didn't get named Time Magazine's Person of the Year, which I thought was a nice touch. You've been giving these pep talks out for a while. You've given them to me in the past. What made you want to start doing them? And why have you kind of continued doing it all this time?
So I had a really kind of like tough career period in like fall 2013. And I really felt like stuff wasn't going my way in minor ways, but just like demoralizing ways. And I really wanted to, I knew that it was going to be fine. Ultimately, I was like, this isn't the end of anything. I just wish there were someone to be like, it's fine. And then I was like, well, that feels a little pathetic to ask everyone for. But I was like, if I can offer this, because I used to do it more on Twitter. I was like, if I can offer this to other people and I'll say it and then I'll be like, right, it's going to be fine. I just said so. If it's true for other people, it's true for me. So that was the genesis of it. And people really responded to it and latched onto it. And it's been like a very rewarding thing to do. I used to do it on the road when I felt like it was late at night and there wasn't like a, frustrating Celtics trade to text about. I would do this and it felt like a little bit of like real human connection. And now the newsletter is like, it's fun to write. I think it's also like a way to produce something, especially while after my last writing job ended, I was like, oh, this is something I can do consistently to like stay sharp and creative and maybe generate a little material and like keep people like keep this conversation of like, hey, I'd love for you to read my stuff without having to like pitch freelance work all the time or like rely on like having a TV job where I can be like, I wrote for this. So this is like a nice little conversation to get to have every week.
I got to say, I can't relate at all to the feeling of doing something to sort of like act as if for you, like hypothetically, if you were doing a self-help podcast about basketball where you talk about your gratitude and what makes people happy and they like. So I doesn't register with me at all. Question number 3. You are a member of the Writers Guild of America and a member of the Council for the WGAE East. You spent much of the last several months on the picket lines advocating for a fair deal for the AMPTP, which I'm happy to say that you got. What was something major that you took away from that period of time?
Wow. It was like a really, kind of rigorous summer, and like and kind of became a real grind. And I think it really took a toll on people financially. And so it was like a real heavy time. But I think the thing that I took away that it's going to stick with me for a long time is feeling it myself and watching other people kind of acknowledge and participate in the career and the work of writing and the non-work of, withholding that labor as like part of the broader labor movement, and like seeing the guild membership stand in solidarity together, and then experiencing this tremendous solidarity from the actors and the crews. And like, the production was able to shut down because union crews wouldn't cross picket lines, and right. Seeing that sacrifice, and then seeing like flight attendants come out and like Starbucks employees come out and join us on the picket lines was like something that that's going to stick with me for a long time. I'm sorry for like the deeply earnest answer, but you come to the sincerity store, you go home with a bucket of sincerity.
That's all right. Listen, if I didn't want that kind of, or I didn't anticipate that kind of answer, I wouldn't anticipate that kind of question. We'll do a dramatic tone shift. Question 4, you recently appeared on the very fun game show podcast, Tell Me About It.
That was fun as hell.
You were given the task of proving to an eccentric billionaire that slam dunks are better than the movie Grease. It's kind of a high concept show. In the course of that episode, you said that your favorite kind of dunk is the alley-oop, which begs the question, what is your favorite alley-oop?
Ooh, gosh. I mean, I loved watching the Marcus Smart, Robert Williams synaptic alley-oop connection for years, but I have to appreciate the classics. Like I think the Dwayne Wade, LeBron snapshot, like mid post alley-oop snapshot with the kind of arms spread is like such a beautiful meme and such a beautiful moment. And what I like, I've written for the Basketball Feelings newsletter, shout out again to Katie Heindel, about how alley-oops feel like true collaboration and trust. And I think that there's like a real beauty to that. And I think that moment is like a real high watermark for like broing out as a concept and guys being dudes. And so I've got to tip my hat, because I'm not just a hater, I'm also an appreciator.
That's exactly right. This is the kind of question where your answer can change moment to moment, day to day.
Yeah.
In this moment right now, I think Jrue to Giannis in the finals, the like game sealing one over the Suns, where it's like, don't throw that pass. Oh my God, he threw that pass. Oh my God, he does it. Like, where the audacity of it rings out in my brain. So we'll say I will.
Gosh, what an important quality for a player to have, audacity.
Yeah, just the confidence to do that in a moment where every erg of everybody else's body must be screaming, just like, hold on to the ball and get fouled. But no,
like, no, I got this.
You can, you don't win with that sort of. You need the willingness to extend where the other guy won't, the will to do that. Question 5, we'll finish it here. Back in 2019, you wrote a great essay for The Cut called "My Wife's Enemies Are Now My Enemies Too."
Yeah.
You extolled the virtue of loving someone so much that you want to destroy those who have in some way wronged them. And in it, you wrote, "I'm not great at having my own enemies, but I do my best. This podcast is nothing if not a venue for personal growth." So do you feel like you've made progress at making enemies over the last few years?
I do. I think I've been a little scrappier lately, and been a little more public, not just about my own enemies like that I generate from zero, but also publicly waging battle against my wife's enemies. I left a long comment on one of my wife's enemies' blogs recently with my name on it. Really said it with my chest. So I feel like I'm getting better. I think I think a lot about the John Mulaney starting his last stand-up special, Baby J, by saying likability is a prison. And so I have been trying to be less likable, not to humble brag.
Josh, I have bad news for you. You're extraordinarily likable, and you've been showing it the entire time of this podcast. The absolute last thing we do here before we get going is a weekly recommendation. It does not have to be anything about basketball. It can be about anything. Recent examples include books about facial recognition technology, going to the library, outshine popsicles, and making baked ziti. Could be anything. Josh Gondelman, something cool and good that you would like to let the listeners know about.
Oh, okay. Okay, this is the easiest hack, and I've found it to be 100% effective. Is that when a friend has a baby, you don't always know what to do for them, and sometimes it's like hard. You're like, oh, do they have too many stuffed animals? Do I get them clothes that the baby's gonna grow out of real quick? This is my never fail hack. Is you get them like a gift card to a delivery service, enough that they could get a nice meal and tip well, because the delivery services don't always pay restaurants fairly. But you do that and you email it to them and they get it in their email. Sometimes you have to follow up because it goes to spam, but I've never had that not get used. That is always appreciated, and it's never like, oh sure, yeah, we'll have this giant stuffed hippopotamus that's going to take up 1 full percent of our New York City apartment.
That's right, Josh. This might be the best recommendation anybody's ever made on the show. This is like, we're going to raise some different shaped cloth to the rafters for this one.
That's right. Big unfurled cloth diaper.
That's right.
Clean.
Right. Yes, we're going to have to wash it by hand to do it, but we're going to get it up there.
Mm-hmm.
I am further past this now. My older daughter is 9. My younger daughter is 6. But this is so clutch. This is an incredible idea. If you are in Josh's shoes here, and saying, I don't know what to do for a friend that has a baby, feeding the family, feeding the parents, making it easy for them to get food is, if you can't show up at their door with a tray of something, allowing them to pick what they want and paying for it is so clutch. It's not even funny. This is tremendous. I love this unreservedly with my entire heart. Something else I love unreservedly with my entire heart, Kiki's delivery service. I have not seen all of Hayao Miyazaki's films. I'm very much looking forward to seeing The Boy and the Heron that just came out. But the ones that I've seen, I've loved. This is the one that I got to revisit most recently. Just saw it this past weekend again with a room full of kids and adults. What it's about: young witch leaves home, travels to big city, starts working as courier, flying around on broom. Kind of a weird concept.
Tale as old as time.
What it's really about: how exhausting and exhilarating it is to find your own way in the world, how hard it is to mature and learn how to take care of yourself, how to face and overcome the kind of doubts that our man Kevin Garnett spoke about at the top of this episode. Also, there is a talking cat that in the English dub is voiced by Phil Hartman. So pretty good.
Wow.
Yeah, it's great. The actors doing the voice dubs in the English cast for Miyazaki films, it's always absolutely insane. Like, this was Kirsten Dunst is Kiki and Phil Hartman is the cat. And you're like, what? And, Christian Bale shows up in these. In the new one, Robert Pattinson is the heron.
I heard he's great.
Yeah, Willem Dafoe shows up apparently as like a parakeet for a while. I don't know. There's a lot happening in Miyazaki movies. But whichever way you want to go with it, I'm sure that you will enjoy them. If you are somebody who enjoys animated film, who we can turn off the "it's a cartoon and I'm a grown-up" component of your brain. I watched with a room full of kids ranging in age from 2 to 9 and grown-ups full, 30 and 40 somethings. Everybody loved it. It was a hit all the way around. It's a worthwhile way to spend an hour and a half of your time if you enjoy whimsy and learning about young witches. If you've made it all the way to the end of this podcast, God bless you. I want to make sure before we get out, actually, we recommend more things. I want to recommend People Pleaser, Josh's stand-up comedy special, which is delightful and wonderful and can be found wherever you stream.
Basically streams wherever at this point. YouTube, it's free with ads at this point. And like Tubi, I think the same deal. Yeah, I think it has disappeared from Quibi at this point.
Well, I mean, Quibi will live on in our hearts, but yes, the bites might not be as quick on the internet anymore. Josh, anything else that we can point people toward on our way out the door?
Yeah, I am going back out on the road a bunch early next year, which I'm really psyched for. And Batavia, Illinois, January 18th through 20th. I'm going to be back on the North Shore, Massachusetts, the following weekend at Off Cabot in Beverly, St. Paul, first weekend in March. But all that, I just want to put one more plug. Thank you so much generously for plugging. That's marvelous. You can go to joshgondelman.substack.com, and it is a free newsletter, and it's got all my tour dates every week delivered right to your inbox if you want to read my stuff or just want to know where I'll be. joshgondelman.com if you don't want to hear what I'm up to and just want to know where I'll be, which feels like a threat, but I'll take it.
Right. It's a little bit concerning. I cannot recommend highly enough the newsletter. It is a wonderful delight delivered into your inbox each week. That's going to do it for this episode of Devine Intervention. Thanks so much to Josh Gondelman for taking all this time to be with us. Thank you to super producer John Gennaro for doing all the things that he does to make the show look and sound great. Thanks to Kevin Garnett for inspiring me this week. And thank you for listening. We will see you again next week. Take care of yourself because you deserve it.